Hello and welcome to my very first outdoor book review. It is currently December 1st of 2020. It is 36 degrees outside, but that is alright. We are going to review a book today. So for my first book we'll be reviewing today is called Inheritance by Christopher Paolini. This is a book that is this is the fourth book in a four-part series known as the Inheritance Cycle. To prevent spoilers of the final ending of the series, I will be reviewing the four books, the series known as the Inheritance Cycle itself, instead of just this individual book, though this is the most recent book I've read. Christopher Paolini first started writing this series whenever he was 15, right after he graduated high school. He graduated through special what I don't know how, but he graduated really early, and he thus started writing this book. Oh, hello. All right, go. I'm doing a book review. Thank you. So he grew up in Montana, and always loved reading. Fantasy was his biggest, his most favorite genre of books to read, and he first started this series. It is his most known series. I believe he has the Inheritance Cycle, the four books, and then one more book that's kind of after this series ends, it was published, and a few other books, but this is his most notable series. The Inheritance Cycle, it starts with a book called Aragon. Then that's the first book. The second book is called Eldest, then Brazinger, and then finally the fourth book, Inheritance. Let's see, I believe this book was published in 2011, the first book, Aragon, being published in 2005. The first book was also adapted into a movie, but it failed miserably. It had very bad reviews, and it was not a very good movie. It disappointed a lot of people, considering how well written the series was and how bad the movie is. But this is my review. So it starts off, alright, in the land of Alagasia there were dragons. They ruled the world, basically. They were proud and they were fierce, and they were the conqueror of everything. They were magnificent creatures that ruled over the land for years upon years. And then after that, the elves arrived in Alagasia. Hello. Sorry, there's a dog here. She won't leave me alone. But the elves arrived, and they were also great, strong beings. They looked a lot like humans, but they actually weren't. They were very strong and were capable of controlling magic like it was no other. And the dragons and the elves conflicted greatly because of that. To assess their dominance in a way, to find the ultimate ruler of the land. And they fought for years and years, a war so great that there could be no winner. They were both driving each race into extinction, basically, which is not really good. So a pact was made between the elves and the dragons using the magic of, it's known as the ancient language. It's this language they speak, and they use that language to control the energy, to manipulate it into whatever magic they need. And they created this pact between the dragons and the elves to where, there goes another dog, I'm sorry, to where an elf and a dragon could be mentally and physically bounded in a way so where they shared mental thoughts, and their everyday life was completed together in a sense. And those who were bounded to a dragon were known as the riders. Now the riders kept peace within the land, and they were kind of like a different race per se, because they were binded to these dragons, and the dragons were binded to them, and everything like that. So eventually humans arrived in this land of Alagasia, and they were also put into the pact of the dragon riders, right? So the dragons, the riders they thrived for many years, protecting intergalactic peace, in a sense. And of course, this takes place in medievalish times. So it's not like they were had guns or anything. So they were proud swordsmen, and they were very good at what they did. They could control magic like the elves. If you were a human, if you were a human writer, you were able to live for eternity as long as you weren't slain by another human or poisoned to take. Gotcha. But you couldn't get sick, and you didn't really die of old age, which is a feature of the elves, but humans, of course, don't have that. So this went on for a while, thousands and thousands of years. The world was in peace until one day a young human writer by the names of Galbatorix, his dragon was slain by a beast known as an Urgle, and throughout his misery of losing his dragon, he went insane, and the writers wouldn't grant him another dragon to say. So he basically turned on the world, and him and 12 other writers known as the Forsworn. They turned against everyone else and slain all the dragons, and took control of the world. And that's basically how our story starts. Is that that tyrant of a king known as Galbatorix, and he slayed all the dragons except the one he owns, and he holds the last two eggs, dragon eggs, in his possession. So it's a very interesting concept to think of, and the book starts with a young farm boy. He's 15 years old. His name is Aragon. Aragon's hunting out in the woods to provide for his family when mysteriously this blue stone appears out of thin air right in front of him. At first he doesn't know what to think of it, but he thinks might be something of use to him. So he takes it back to his village, where he tries to trade it for some money or food. But it turns out that this object can be very powerful and dangerous, and no one wants anything to do with it. Well, it turns out that stone was actually a dragon egg, and that egg hatched for Aragon, and then Aragon becomes bound to this dragon, where he becomes the second last dragon rider in the world, for all the Forsworn were slain. And it's kind of, the story starts off with it's kind of like his duty to avenge all the fallen dragons and overthrow the king. So it's a very interesting book. I will say that. I really enjoyed the read. The thing about it is, like, it's obvious. Christopher Paolini took a lot of inspiration from this book, because this book reflects off a lot of other fantasy novels already written, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because it's not like exactly the same thing, just mirrored and back to back. There is some things that are very similar, like elves and dwarves and the humans. They're all clashing, and that's very similar to the Lord of the Rings. But this book took its own concept and kind of flew with it, which I really enjoyed. The first book, Aragon, it was a good book. I won't lie. I enjoyed reading it, but it was a little dry at times. Now, I believe this book was first published when Christopher Paolini was only 17 years old. So you can't really say it's a dry book. In a sense that a kid wrote this. Someone younger than me right now was able to write this novel, which is well over 400 pages, I believe. I don't have all of the whole series with me. I just have this one. That's because I rented it from the public library. So I can't really show you the other books to showcase them. I first read Aragon about a year ago, and I didn't really continue with the series because of what I said. It was kind of dry, and I had intentions of doing it eventually, but through the course of the coronavirus and everything shut down, I couldn't go to the library to check out the second book. I couldn't do that until like last August, whenever I started school again. Um, so I read Eldest, Brizinger, and eventually Inheritance, pretty much back to back. They're fairly sized books. I believe this one is 800 something pages. Brizinger being close to 700, and Eldest is about 600. It's kind of odd. They all kind of gradually expand in size, but they're. It's a fair book. It's very interesting, all the lore that is created within this universe. That's what I kind of love about fantasy, is that all these worlds are created from through the pages of a book, and it's all in your head and stuff. It's this amazing thing, and it can be expanded in so many ways that are, it's all up to your imagination. And one thing I love about this, and like I said, it's very similar to Lord of the Rings, if you've ever read that. Lord of the Rings, kind of Hobbit, but it has a like map of the world in which they live in, which is pretty cool. There's also appendixes of the different races' language, like the dwarf language, the elves language. It also has ways to pronounce names, because it's of course it's a different time, and that's something I really appreciated. It's kind of interesting, again, like Tolkien, created his own language for the elves and stuff like that. So it's obvious. This Chris was drew a lot of inspiration for this novel. And recently we read Beowulf, and while I was reading Beowulf, I could really, see where, because Beowulf is known as one of the greatest works of literature in our time, and it's inspired many, and this is, I believe, one of them, because it's set in that Anglo-Saxon kind of time where glory is everything, and who your father was, and whom you kill, and how many battles you fought, things like that. It's in this book. This book has an amazing perspective of character development, which I thought was amazing. It started with this farm boy. He knew not much of outside his little village, where he lived in his farm, and he became this glorious warrior who was destined to protect the world and overthrow the king. And he's this. It's kind of really interesting, and the settings it takes place in. If you lived in that time, you wouldn't travel very much, due to the complications of it. And so he begins to travel. His family was killed whenever he hit the dragon first hatch. The king set out to have him killed and the dragon killed. Well, he escaped before they got there, and he slayed his uncle. And so he originally sets out to avenge his uncle, but then realizes that there's something much greater to it than just avenging his uncle. It's more of saving the world. It comes to a point where he no longer believes that everything revolves around him. It's all about the greater good. So he's like willing to sacrifice his life for the future of the world, basically. And I thought it was a very good read. Now, would I recommend this? I would recommend it. It kind of, like, upon the cover, it looks kind of childish, dragons and stuff. That's the main focus of the book. And that's kind of what I thought it would be, a little intended for younger audiences. But it's not. It can be very graphic at times, a lot of fighting and gory battles of blood and gore. So I would recommend it, with your own risk. If you don't mind reading stuff like that, then I would highly recommend it. It was a great read. It was very entertaining. After I put down the first book and picked up the second book, it was almost hard to put down, to say, because it's just very interesting. all at the same time, and there is times where it can be very predictable. Kind of can expect what's going to happen, but that doesn't really change my mind on anything. I really enjoyed the read. The ending really surprised me. I thought it could have been better. The ending of the series, that is. I thought the ending opened up a lot more opportunities for more books. It was almost like it left it on a cliffhanger. And there was closure to some of it, but there's still a lot of things that go unanswered. And me personally, whenever I'm reading, I don't really appreciate things like that. You kind of always want to have that one question answered. But of the series, I would highly recommend it. It's kind of crazy, I believe. See, one thing I'm always when I read series, I don't often read them when they first come out. See, okay, I was wrong. The first book was published in 2002, and the last book, this book here, was published in 2011. So I just couldn't imagine waiting, 9 years to finish a series. It's just crazy. But I think the longest I've waited is like a year and a half. But other than that, it was a great book. It's not the most favorite book I've read. I read often, but it's definitely up there. In terms of fantasy, I'm sure there's a bunch of books that would be considered greater than that one there. And that this book did have a lot of flaws. Like I said, a lot of things go unanswered, and a lot of things are very predictable. A lot of things you can kind of see coming, but that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. And I think from like a teenager's perspective, the intended audience is young adults, teenagers. They wouldn't really think about things like that. They wouldn't be comparing and contrasting to other fantasy novels. And the thing about it is, like, you can't really write a book without drawing inspiration from something. So I think this book should deserve a lot more credit than it does get in regards of that. I think the movie, I haven't actually watched the movie, but I've seen trailers of it, and I can see why people were very disappointed with it, because it doesn't really follow the book at all, and it was really poorly filmed. I was kind of surprised they didn't try and reboot that, because with now today's technology, they could have made it a lot better, in my opinion, but they did not. So that's about it. I think for this book, it's definitely a good read. Highly recommend. Of the 4 books in the series, I would say probably the second is my favorite. The last book, I was kind of disappointed with. I think the ending of a series is just about everything. One of the most important things you can have, and this one's ending was kind of poor. I won't lie. And the ending is pretty similar to other series. But there is a book, kind of, I think it's called the Fork, the Witch, and the Worm. I think I'm gonna go check it out tomorrow at the library, and read it. It's kind of like it's based in the same world, Alagasia, as this book, Aragon. But it's set like at a different time, and it's short stories following this story. It's not like the same. It's not a continuation. It's not like really a sequel, I guess, but it's more of like I don't know what it would be called. It's there's a name for it. I can't remember what it is. So I think I'm gonna read that. Now I haven't read any reviews on that. I don't know if it's gonna be great. Usually when series do that, they do it for closure and stuff. So I couldn't tell you if it'd be a good book or not. But I think it might answer some of the unsolved questions, mysteries of this novel. So I'm looking forward to that. That's about all I have for today. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. It's the first time I've ever done anything like this. I don't know if I'm going to continue. I'll probably do it for another book some other time. Um, but yeah, thanks. Hope you enjoyed, and goodbye. Well, all right.